Me? Oh. Welcome to Inspire, Invite, Ignite Conversations That Count. Today's discussion is about speaking your truth to yourself and others. It is crucial for personal growth and authentic living to speak your truth. You must acknowledge and express your emotions, beliefs, and desires honestly, both to yourself and others. And today we are joined by our beautiful panelists, Katerina Lenarcic. Oh, sorry. Is a spiritual mediator and evolutionary life coach, a mentor, and the owner and founder of Be Your True Self. Having lifelong connections with her universal life force and spiritual guidance, she creates a welcoming and safe space for clients to explore aspects of themselves that have been repressed, ignored, or hidden from themselves. Our next panelist is Lyndal Schultz, who is an empowered divine feminine who works mainly with women who have experienced trauma in their lives or have lost their sense of identity and self-worth to help get themselves to a place of self-empowerment, love, and appreciation. Marina Shakour Haber is a life coach and is certified in hypnotherapy. She's also an author and a speaker who guides people from confusion and helplessness to clarity, purpose, and empowerment so that they can feel good about themselves and thus change their world. And last but not least is Linda Binns, who is an accomplished energy coach, speaker, and author. As someone who is introverted, highly sensitive, and empathic, she understands how difficult it can be to thrive in a world where you are seen as being very difficult. Her mission is to empower sensitive, caring women to stop giving their power and energy away, embrace their uniqueness, and bring their much needed gifts to the world. So let's start with Linda. And Linda Binns. And Linda, I am an HSP. So you would have been a perfect coach for me a few years ago when I didn't even know I was an HSP. So it's very, very needed, your type of work for people like me. So let's start with you with the question, what does speaking your truth mean to you? And in your opinion, why do people struggle with it?
I think to me, it means really knowing who you are and what is most important to you and being able to articulate that. And as someone who grew up really, I think often, especially for those of us who are highly sensitive, we may have struggled to fit in because we're seen as being very different. And certainly for me, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my truth was, and I certainly wasn't able to articulate it for many years. I think until you really know who you are, it's very difficult to speak your truth. And I was always terrified of speaking my truth, or I certainly wasn't encouraged to articulate what my needs were or my desires. I was always made to feel that my thoughts weren't valid, or, what I had to think or say was not important. So certainly if you have that kind of background, I think you really do struggle. And many of the people I work with, even when they've had a loving childhood, they still don't truly know who they are and what they really want and what's important to them. So, that's a big part of the journey. And once you know that and you really own it, then you are able to articulate it and speak your truth. That's certainly been my experience.
Thank you for sharing. How about you, Marina? What does speaking your truth mean to you? And in your opinion, why do people struggle with it?
Why do people struggle with it is, in my opinion, because they are really probably not really very comfortable about who they are. And I can say that about myself. I was not comfortable with who I was, and I was trying to fit in, and I never fit in. And then we start looking at ourselves and go, what's wrong with me? When there's really no need to ask what's wrong with me, because we're all beautifully unique. And it is important to appreciate our uniqueness. It's important to celebrate our uniqueness, because our uniqueness creates this weave of this tapestry of a multifaceted world. How boring would it be if we all were the same? But it's easier said than done, because we all try to fit in, because then we don't stick out. We are not vulnerable. People cannot make fun of us. And here we are in other people's heads thinking, what are they thinking about me? And because I think they think this about me, I will not speak my truth and forever hold my peace. And a wonderful, valuable message is most likely lost. So this is, as we said, a journey into self-discovery and finding your voice and having the courage to be you.
Thank you so much. Yes, it is. Yes, a lot of people avoid speaking the truth because of that, and afraid to be vulnerable. Yes. How about you, Katerina? What does speaking your truth mean to you? And in your opinion, why do people struggle with it?
Well, speaking your truth means you have to be vulnerable and find your courage to speak from the heart. And we're not, for me, said that we get put into little boxes, don't we? We can't say this and we can't do that. No, you can't be different. So for me, speaking my truth took me a very long time. Took me like 50 something years to be able to feel comfortable to speak my truth, because of not being encouraged by the people around me from my history to speak my truth. And that creates walls around your heart space and walls around your physical life, where you don't want to, you feel shy, or you don't think that somebody's going to listen to you, or you think that your truth is not valuable because you're being, because when you do speak your vulnerability and your truth, there's always going to be somebody who's not going to agree, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to disagree. And these people are just projecting themselves onto you because they want to have the courage that you're having to speak your truth. For me personally, like I said, it took me a very long time to be able to speak my truth. And still now, you have to sit quietly, you have to breathe in, you have to do everything that you can. You pick your tools to be able to sit here and speak your truth. And sometimes there's a lot of us who are speaking our truth, and we have to say things that people don't like. And speaking your truth usually means you're saying something that somebody else is not going to like, because it's going to trigger them into, God forbid, look into their own lives and change their lives. So I really believe speaking your truth allows you to find your courage, because there's always going to be somebody who's so it's very interesting, isn't it? Like, everybody has their version of what that means.
Right. Is Katerina breaking, or only I can, for me?
Yes, it was breaking up. Yes.
it's breaking, or for everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
We're
Katerina.
listening.
Okay, we're breaking towards the end, so but we heard most of it, so thank you. How about you, Lyndal? What does speaking your truth mean to you? And in your opinion, why do people struggle with it?
Yeah, I'm very much,
Hello?
I suppose, on the same page as Linda there. About, you have to know what your truth is first before you can speak it. I think that is so critical because, you see so many people walk around not knowing who they are, and knowing who you are is really connecting to who you are as a soul being as well. So for me, it's a critical factor. And I think what I've seen is we are born into this world, into different bloodlines. We have, cultural conditioning, we have family patterning, we have religion, we have gender, we have all of these aspects that tell us what our truth is, right? And we don't question a lot of this stuff. We just, you hear yourself saying, I did it for a long time. I would hear myself repeating things that my mother, my grandmother would say. And I would, sit with that and say, yeah, I don't really believe in that. But it never really registered as to, no, that's not my truth. So it's pulling apart all that conditioning and patterning. And that's a big job to do for most of us, because it's quite confronting thinking about, what we've known all our lives. Is that really true for us? So, yeah, I think that's where people struggle the most. And I always encourage people to question everything. Question everything. If it's not right for you, ask. Think about where you are in your heart center and say, is that really my truth? Is that right for me? So
Lyndal, what is your truth?
Oh, I have many truths. I have many truths. I know what I want across all areas of my life. And for me, I find that if I go against that, if I'm not living as part of that, I feel like I'm going against my soul.
Oh.
That's what it feels like for me. So, and sometimes that's tricky because you have to have some conversations that people don't like. People don't like to be told that what they're saying you don't resonate with, or you don't agree with, or that's not your truth. But I think people respect you more when you know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Marina, is there a connection between speaking your truth and authentic living? If yes, what is it? And what is it? And are there any benefits to it?
There any connection between speaking your truth and being authentic? Well, I would see clearly there is, because when we not speak our truth, are we not either being ashamed? Are we not hiding something? And I would say that I haven't spoken my truth for a very long time, which was about my spirituality. And I called it, I locked myself into my spiritual closet, because whenever I spoke about it, it was like people thought I have two heads on, or they thought I have two heads on. It's all perspective. And so I really wouldn't come out. But it took time and truly a calling in me. There was a rising up in me that demanded that I show my colors. And I did it, and I felt better for it, freer, more empowered. And I had to join actually Toastmasters to learn to speak up, because I'd so long shut my mouth because I was so uncomfortable of sticking out. And I remember meeting a lady who had never spoken out. She was always quiet. She ended up with throat cancer. And it was clear that she was cutting herself down, and that's why she got sick. And I thought to myself, it's not going to happen to me. Speak your truth. They either like you or they don't. And that's on them.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, there's in my opinion, there's a difference between religion and spirituality. And I'm from India and I'm a Hindu. All my childhood, I heard about Hinduism and I didn't really believe in it, but I wasn't introduced to spirituality. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And then when I come here, they're like, oh, you're from India and you don't know about root chakra and you don't know about this and you don't know about that. And it's the foundation is all from India. I was like, yeah, but in India, they never talked about it. And I wonder why. So, yeah. And and you can be spiritual without being religious. And that's the type I am. But it's sad that they don't teach you these things when you're young. So, yeah. Lyndal, how about you? Is there a connection between speaking your truth and authentic living? If yes, what is it? And are there any benefits to it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like anything. Once you know what your truth is, why would you not want to live it? Why would you not want to live it? I work with people and I see people that are in relationships where they're absolutely miserable. Both them and their partners are miserable. And, they use all the excuses under the sun. I have to stay for my kids, or this is what marriage looks like, or this is what the relationship is, blah, blah, blah. Because when you look at it from a subconscious mind perspective, the subconscious mind doesn't like change. It does not want us to change. It likes us to be stuck in our little comfortable, even if it's not that comfortable, our usual ways that we do things, right? So for a lot of people, it's a lot easier for them to ignore their truth because change can be scary. Change can be really scary for people. And it's learning to be brave in yourself and empower yourself in the sense that nothing that you feel that's true to your heart is wrong. Mm-hmm. It's something that we're not taught. As you were saying, Reshma, we're not taught this when we're younger either. We're not taught to trust in who we are, to discover who we are, to ask the questions about, what do I believe in? What's right for me? I was very lucky as a young child. My mum said to me, when other kids were going to church, and we weren't really we didn't really, brought up under a religious method, I suppose. My mum said to me, go try them out, see which one resonates with you. And if none of them resonates, then find how you connect to source yourself, right? So I was very lucky to have that, but a lot of people aren't in that space. They're taught, religion, or they're taught a particular way, and questioning that becomes very difficult for a lot of people. So yeah, it's trusting in yourself as well.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and the uniqueness and being different, right? It's huge, but people will hesitate. Like I was different, and I was always considered the black sheep of the house and a rebel because I was different. And at that time, when I grew up, I had no idea I was an HSP. I came to know I'm an HSP only 2 years back, and a whole weight was lifted off my shoulder when I came to know there's a whole tribe of HSPs. Yes, they're only 25% of the world, but still I was happy to know it's not just me. So, and I tried my best to stay authentic, and I got into trouble because of that, because people are like, you can't behave like this, you need to behave in that way, especially because you're a woman and you need to do this and that. And I stuck to my authenticity and got into plenty of trouble. So, Linda, is there a connection between speaking your truth and authentic living? If yes, what is it? And are there any benefits to it?
Well, I would say yes, absolutely. I don't think you can live authentically if you don't know what your truth is, you don't know who you are, and you can't speak it. How can you be authentic? Because you're living somebody else's truth. You know, I was brought up to believe that what everybody else thought about me was most important, that I had to take care of everybody else's needs, and my needs were not important. And so I became just this huge people pleaser. And I just completely lost touch with any sense of what was important to me. It was all about everybody else. And I'm really good at knowing what other people need or how to help other people. If somebody needed help, I was always the one who would volunteer. I was terrified of speaking up. Just as an example, at school, I remember I would never raise my hand to answer a question because I was always scared I'd get it wrong. Well, I thought it was inevitable I'd get it wrong because I was always wrong at home. So why wouldn't I be wrong everywhere else? You know, and it wasn't until I started making my own way in the world and I started to see that those beliefs and that conditioning that I had was wrong, and that I did have things to say. And once I started, it was actually really hard. If you're a people-pleasing type of personality, if you've been brought up to believe that that's what you have to do, it's really hard to reconnect with who you are and what you want, because that's always, and I find this a lot with my clients, it's really hard sometimes to know, what do I want? You know, it could be as simple as, you know, with a group of friends, where do we want to go for lunch? Oh, I don't mind. You know, it's what everybody else wants. And if I ask myself, well, where would I prefer to go? It wasn't just a case of I didn't want to say where I should go. I didn't know because I was so unused to connecting with what I wanted. And so that has been a whole lesson in itself for me of learning, what do I want? Who am I? And what is important to me? And you cannot live authentically if you don't know that. And so knowing who you are, being able to speak your truth, that is authenticity. And I think once you learn that and once you start doing that, there's no going back. You would not want to go back. You couldn't pay me to go back to who I used to be. It's just, once you start doing it and you start to feel, it is like a relief. It's like a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. It's like, oh, there I am. This is who I am, you know? So I think it's essential for authentic living. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, and this whole thing has become a big hoopla, right? Imposter syndrome is because people are just trying to be people pleasers, and then they have to lie just because it's imposter syndrome, and then they have to spend all this energy remembering what lie they told which person and in front of whom what role they played, and it's such a wastage of energy and time and money. So, Katerina, what are, in your opinion, is there a connection between speaking your truth and authentic living? If yes, what is it, and are there any benefits to it?
Well, with my clients, I feel that they just want to be heard and they want to speak their truth so they can move through their everyday life, so that they can understand who they are at any given moment. And what everybody, like, just going on with what everybody was saying, being authentic, I feel, takes a lot of courage, because once again, we're not in a world that really lets us do it. And also in the spiritual community, everybody has a different idea of what they should be doing. And even that creates blockages and, hindrance for some people, because there might be, my client might not will be afraid to say what they feel because somebody else doesn't agree with them, because there's a lot of people, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, who do pick up people's imperfections and throw them back at them and say that you can't speak your truth, I don't agree with you. And then so then they do feel that they have to be a little bit of an imposter to get through the conversation at that moment. There's many layers of being authentic, and I always encourage people to say what they feel, even if it's not a positive thing. Like, I feel angry today because somebody isn't listening to me, and let's look at why I feel that way. What is it that I can do today to bring in my authentic feeling? Because everybody comes from where they're at. They project where they're at. So I always encourage people to say what you feel and don't be afraid, because the world wants you to be afraid. The world doesn't want you to say how you're feeling. The world doesn't want you to be authentic, because once you start being authentic, and I agree with Linda, you can't go back. You can't turn around. My guidance always says to me, don't look back, keep walking forward, don't look back. And what that meant for me was that I found the courage to, stand tall and speak my truth, no matter what that is, and be okay with it, because I grew up being told to not speak, sit in the corner and don't speak. If you want a glass of water, you better ask me first, that sort of thing, right? So it can take a lifetime to even find the courage to speak your truth. So of course we attract and have the energy. That being authentic also means for me that just be your true self, you know what I mean? Like, just, like something, say it. Like, we have to cut through the patterning, we have to cut through the belief systems, we have to cut through the darkness that's on the planet, because that doesn't want you to shine your light. That doesn't want you to tell your truth, because that would mean that you're going to give somebody else, you're going to hold space for somebody to learn how to speak their truth without fear and judgment. And once that happens, you start bringing through the energy of, it's like a hammer. Everybody starts breaking everything down and creating new energy, so we can speak our truth without the fear. Being authentic for me means being me. If you don't like what I say, well, then have a look at, then you've got to look at yourself somewhere underneath all of that I say, right? But each of us have to take that quiet moment and take care of our own selves to learn who we are, to learn what we can do in that given moment, because we change every hour of the day. Every hour of the day, we make a different decision that creates a future that we may not even like, because we weren't able to speak our truth. And then we get frustrated, and then we have to reach out to people, and to find the courage to reach out to people to help us find our truth, because there's so many layers of what I call mud above you. So you have to move through it all to find it. And the world needs you to speak your truth. The world needs you to say, no, I don't like that because I feel something, right? So it's all about communication. How am I going to communicate? And if you're not able to be authentic at that given moment, sit down and ask yourself, what is it that I can do to help myself to be authentic? What can I do to help myself? So I think that's important.
Thank you so much, Katerina. Yeah, and it's true, right? Like, the society doesn't want us to change, because if 5 people change, then everybody else will need to change. And as Lyndal said, change is not easy, and also that's why people ignore it and things like that. So the next question, which is, about change and ignoring and all that and fear, why do people avoid speaking the truth about their life situation to themselves? What are they afraid of? So why not speak it? Even forget about the world and others. Why do we hesitate speaking it even to ourselves? Like, why are we in denial and ignore our own feelings and thoughts?
Well,
Lyndal.
Me?
oh,
Yes.
I think one of the big things are fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of judgment, fear of being alone. There's some of the key things that we're worried about. Well, people will think of us, will they accept us? Will they love us? Am I worthy? All of these key things come up as part of this. I was talking to a woman the other day, and she was talking about how she loved photography and she would love to be a photographer full time. But she said, but you just don't make any money out of photography. And I looked at her and I said, that's not my truth. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, are you telling me that every single photographer on the planet doesn't make any money? Like, how do you know that's true? That's just something your parents have taught you. Like, look inside yourself and ask you, is that true for you? And she goes, yeah, that's right. It's not true. So, we do go along with what we've been told, what as the other ladies were saying, what our conditioning and patterning is, and, what we've been taught as part of our lives. And those fears of being different, of being outside of the box, are what usually stops us from asking the question, what is true to me?
Right.
And that's what we need to get back to. Ask ourselves the question, what is true to me? Like what Marina was saying before, is when we stop asking that question, we can get to a place where we create disease, right? Dis-ease, because we're creating blockages in our energy, and that ultimately results in physical issues. Mm-hmm. So it's critical on so many levels to know exactly what's true for you.
Right. But why do we even not accept our own life situation, right? Like if we don't like a job, we'll still stay in it. We don't want to look at our finances, and we are in denial to just feel good that, okay, it's not in that bad a shape. So what's the purpose of denying these type of things to ourselves and suffering within?
Yeah, because it's, if you think about it from a job, let's use a job example, right? You might have been brought up in a family where they've said, how it works in our family is you have to work hard at it and keep going, and that's when you'll get success, right? So this is your belief system. This is your family patterning that has brought through that if you don't have a job and you don't work your 60 hours a week, then you're never going to get money to get ahead, right? Okay. So this is what we believe in our system. So we don't question that to say, is everyone on the planet working 60 hours a week in a job that they hate? No. So how can it be true for one person and not for me? Mm-hmm. So it's learning to question everything that we think we know when we're brought up with. Question it. Ask the question, is that true for me? Because guaranteed 90% of it will not be true. 90% of it. And like Linda was saying before, when you're brought up with pleasing and rescuing, and in all these environments where, women aren't supposed to do that job, or a nice girl wouldn't do this, or all these different things that we're taught, we put all these limitations on ourselves. And that can be work, that can be love, being in relationships where we think we're not worthy enough to be with the person that we really want to be with. There's so many different aspects that we really limit ourselves because of other people's beliefs.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, Marina, why do people avoid speaking the truth about their life situation to themselves? What are they afraid of?
Well, I would say very often when we lie to ourselves, it's also about not taking on the responsibility. Very often what we do is we play the victim because oh, poor me. And we're not being honest that we also contributed potentially to a situation. And so we'd rather lie. I also find that it has a lot to do with shame and guilt of either being different, thinking different, or when something really awful has happened to us and we're ashamed of speaking to it. We're afraid of how we are being judged when in reality, we are our own harshest judges. Most people, they are so caught up in their own world that they think about you for a moment and they're back into their own world judging themselves while you are stuck in what will they think of me, when the key is, what are you thinking about yourself? Why can't we own it? And I really believe that when things happen, they happen for us. Not all the things feel very good, but they happen to us so that we become who we are. So it's challenging very often to say it out loud. It's awkward because, again, people, we may be really concerned what other people think, and we want to fit in so badly and be that the happy-go-lucky people, of which there are probably very few, if any. And so we start lying. And once we start lying to ourselves. And we said earlier, the lie keeps perpetuating and gets bigger and bigger, and we lose ourselves in one big lie. So yeah, I think shame, guilt, and taking responsibility has a lot to do with that.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Linda, how about you? In your opinion, why do people avoid speaking the truth about their life situation to themselves? What are they afraid of?
I think quite often people are afraid to find out who they really are. And I think sometimes people don't know that they're not speaking their truth. As you were talking about this, it was reminding me of someone. So I did a workshop, this was years ago. I did a workshop, it was kind of a group coaching thing. And so as we were, as people in the group were participating, there was one person there and she was always cracking a joke. She was the life and soul of any party. And I noticed that whenever it came to her turn to share something, she deflected to somebody else. She always made it about somebody else. And so I took her aside afterwards and I said, do you realize that this is what you do? And so I asked her a couple of questions and she just broke down in tears. Anyway, it turned out that she had so much pain, inner pain from her childhood. She'd spent her life covering that up. And she built this persona of, I'm the life and soul of the party. I'm always cracking jokes and, everybody loves me because I'm so funny. And that was true. People loved having her around because she was so funny. But she had so much of this pain going on inside. And I think she just built this wall, around her that she didn't even know. She'd lost all sense of the fact that was really going on for her. So I think that can happen sometimes. And I think the fear of the unknown, sometimes it's more comfortable to stay in what you know, and tolerate what you know, even though it's not right for you or it's uncomfortable. You don't want to admit it, because if you admit it, that means you've got to change it. And the fear of that change can be greater than the discomfort you feel of staying where you are. So I think there can be many reasons people avoid speaking their truth to themselves. It all comes down to fear, but also I think a disconnection. I think if you think who you are is this mind-based self, who your mind tells you you are and what your mind tells you is important to you, and you don't know, because I didn't used to know how to connect with my inner self, the true self, then I think sometimes you just don't know. So it can be a number of things, I think.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I stayed at least 5 years longer, I think, in my abusive, unhappy marriage, just because of the fear of the unknown. Like, at least I know how to deal with this guy, and God knows what the next guy or husband or boyfriend will be like. And just like compromised, and it's like, okay, this is life, and life can't be all happy-go-lucky, and we need to just survive or deal with it. But that's not true. And then eventually I did divorce, but stayed 5 years longer just because of all these fears. And it's sad we do that. But yeah. Katerina, how about you? Why do people avoid speaking the truth about their life situation to themselves? What are they afraid of?
Well, I think everybody. Okay, so I'll just move. Why are we afraid, or why are people afraid? Because our own empowerment is much more scarier than what somebody else is saying. Because I know in my journey, and I've been mentored by a spirit team, and they used to always say to me, why do you underestimate yourself? Go and sit with that and find out why you underestimate yourself. And the reason is because I was afraid of my own power, because I knew that if I once I moved out of the space that I was made to believe in, that I would have to face myself. And I agree, it's all about are people willing to help themselves to look at themselves? Because when we have to look at ourselves, we will see what we've created prior to that moment, right? So it could be a monster, we can make ourselves to look like monsters, and actually we're not. The way that I help people, like, I deal with energy. So a lot of people don't want to face that, because it means that they have to go into their own shadows and look at their own darkness, which scares people, right? That's where, and I find that when I help somebody go into that space, they actually discover that they're empowered enough to find the courage to change things, because of all the conditioning and the learning that we get, that they created something that wasn't there in the first place. So yeah, it's like what everyone is saying, your belief systems, where you are and what you're living. But I'm just going to take a little step forward. For me to help somebody, say, get rid of a dark entity, they have to be willing to go within themselves and do the inner work foremost. Like, I can't just go into somebody's space and remove something that was there for 20 years. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so lodged into the energetics of their lives, and it becomes part of their life. So they manifest it, right? So that it becomes their physical self. So it's all about being really truthful about who you are at that given moment. Oh my God, I'm afraid of my own power. And so what you want to do is retreat, don't you? You want to retreat back into your little cave once you come out into the sunshine, because the light actually shines on all of that. And being authentic about that can take a lifetime. And some people might take a couple of lifetimes to do it, one step at a time. I always say there's no rush, there's no competition, there's no, it's not a race. So there's no winners or losers. You just take your time and you learn how to face all the shadow part, because I do shadow work, and people say, oh, please get rid of the entity that's around me, but let me show you what that entity is. It's your It's your lack of courage to know who you are, because you've created that little monster there to keep you safe. So, but to be in that space now is going to be more harmful. So you will create disease in the body, or you will have difficult relationships because you're not dealing with it. So being authentic with yourself is deciding that you're going to stand up, dust yourself, and learn to see the difficult parts of yourself first and foremost, so you can walk out into the sunshine and see how beautiful you really are, because it will give you the tools of courage and determination. And once you learn how to do that, eventually the negativity of all life, you'll stop responding to it, and you'll create a lot more light, like a lot more opportunities to be authentic. I mean, speaking your truth, it's all about speaking their truth, right? Because we don't know what the story is behind the closed doors. So we all got to be compassionate towards ourselves foremost, and learn that sometimes the monsters we think that are looking at us is not actually monsters, just ourselves looking at you going, hey, hello, I need you to look at me now so we can change things, you know. So if I have to be this big, terrible monster, then I will, you know. So authenticity, it's just, it gets used all the time. So I always say, you know, take a breath, have a quiet moment, look within yourself, and know that you have the ability to be authentic in that given moment. Even if you don't like something, that's being authentic, right? Even if you don't like something about yourself and speaking your truth, that's being authentic. And that's the other thing we need to help people with. I feel angry. Well, that's your authenticity. So let's look at that. And why are you angry? Instead of saying, oh, no, you know, let's put some love and light on there, and let's deal with that tomorrow, and let's look at the positive things. Well, the positive thing is to look at the authenticity of whatever it is at that given moment. And that, I feel, will help us to stand up and dust ourselves and become much stronger in our own, you know, convictions and so on. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katerina.
Thank
Yes. Yes. And yeah, it's true. Like as Marina said, right? There's so much guilt and shame. There was a client of mine who was afraid to look at her numbers, her finances, because she's like, how can I not know my understand my own finances? It's like, it's so shameful to even admit to somebody that I don't understand, I don't know what income is, what my expenses, and it's very, and for them, it's like being vulnerable to themselves is so hard. And she was from the military and all, so they've been disciplined, you know, so vulnerability doesn't come anywhere in their vocabulary when they're in the military. And now she had to be vulnerable with herself to admit that she doesn't really understand her own financial situation. So these type of things hurt us, and then we are suffering and struggling, and she's like, and then she feels broke because she doesn't have money to do the things she loves doing, and then it becomes a struggle. So the next question is, what are the fears that hold people back from speaking their truth to others? And could you please share a tip with the audience of how to overcome the fears? So basically, this is like our last question and wrapping up. So we love all your tips for the audience. So let's start with Linda.
What are the fears that hold us back? I think we've been led to believe that vulnerability is weakness, and we don't want to show weakness. We think we'll be judged. and criticized, and we may have been judged and criticized in the past for showing any vulnerability. What I have learned is that the opposite is true, that when you are willing to be vulnerable, one, it takes great strength, but my experience has been that people really appreciate it. I'll give you an example. Public speaking in front of groups used to be probably the most terrifying thing for me. The idea of standing up in front of a group and speaking was terrifying. But when I started my business many years ago, I realized that I was going to have to do it because, I had a need to educate, teach people, to share the knowledge that I had. And I was terrified to do it because I'm an introvert. I'm not a public speaker. I thought that people would not like me. They would think I wasn't very good, all of those things. And so what I decided to do, especially in the beginning, is I stood up and I was honest with people. I said, I'm really nervous about public speaking, but I am so passionate about what I want to share that, I want to share this with you. Anyway, I was just very honest. And I said, if you're expecting a polished speaker, that's not what you're going to get. I'm just me sharing information. And I was blown away by people's response to that, and how people came up to me afterwards and thanked me for being willing to share that and for being honest. And they said that it's given them the courage to do something that they were afraid of. And it took me by surprise, because I thought people would look at it as a great weakness. Oh, she doesn't, she's not a good speaker or whatever, but people appreciated it instead. So I think we have this fear that we'll be judged, that we're not good enough somehow. I have found that even if you're going to have a difficult conversation, or you're feeling uncomfortable about saying something to someone, I will tell them that, I need to tell you something, but it's making me really uncomfortable that I have to share this with you. And here goes. And then, people are feeling like they have to support me in the sharing of this difficult information. So I think if you can just be honest, first of all, with yourself, but don't think that you have to be something you're not. People will support you if you're having difficulty with something. Just being honest about it and showing that vulnerability, I think, takes great strength. It certainly is not a weakness. So that would be my advice. First of all, just be honest about how you're feeling. If you're scared, if you're, whatever it is that you're feeling about something, be willing to share that. I remember the first time I said no to somebody, I was terrified. I ruminated over it, thought about it for weeks. And then I built up the courage, said no to this person who was a very aggressive, assertive person, by the way. And I said, in a very, kind of loving way, I just said, no, that doesn't work for me. And she just said, okay. I thought, wow, I put myself through hell for weeks worrying about this, and she just accepted it. So that honesty really brings such great rewards. So be honest with yourself about how you're feeling, and do not be afraid to let other people know if something is difficult for you, because they will support you.
Yes, that's so true. Yes, very true. I've gone through that and learned it the hard way. But when I was told, like, if you're like, the first time I was going to do public speaking, and they're like, just outright tell them that this is the first time you're going to be speaking on stage and you're super afraid and you might mess up. And then they understand. And in fact, they, as you were saying, they support you. And then at the end, in fact, they're like, oh, you did such a good job and you were so authentic, and your fumbling and not knowing what to speak just showed more of your authenticity and vulnerability, which they appreciated, instead of me trying to put on some act and trying to be perfect. So yes, it works. And
it does. And it's inspiring to other people. It gives them permission to be themselves too. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm so glad I don't remember who, but whoever gave me that tip was the best tip I ever got. Yes. Marina, how about you? Uh, in your opinion, what are the fears that hold people back from speaking their truth to others? And could you please share a tip with the audience of how to overcome the fears?
Definitely. There most certainly a whole variety of fears, but I believe that the root of all evil, the biggest fear of all, is the fear of not being enough. And the fear of not being enough leads to the fear of not having enough. The fear of not having enough leads to the fear of not doing enough, to be less than. And in reality, what the biggest fear is in reality the absence of love, the absence of self-love, which is, of course, again reflected in I'm not good enough. So that I find leads to a whole smorgasbord of other fears, but that's the biggest one that I can see. What would I advise someone if they experience fear? Generally speaking, when we are in a fearful situation, we are panicked, we are anxious, we are not thinking clearly, we are going berserk. And from that state, you cannot find any solutions. So what I suggest to my clients is that, first of all, take a deep breath. If you can stand, go ahead, stand, or if you sit, that's fine too. Put your hand on underneath your heart and right above your belly, your navel, your belly button, and put your hand there. So breathe in and breathe out. Say to yourself, clear my mind, clear my mind, clear my mind, and start focusing on your stomach. Breathing in, breathing out, and the state that you are in terms of anxiety, label it 10. And then as you breathe and completely focus on the one point, which is what it's called, which is the center point of our being, you focus on that and you breathe, count the number down, and you will see the numbers going down from 10 to 9, whatever. So keep on breathing, fully focused on this one point. And when you're at about 4, you're fine. You definitely can try to go lower, but at 4, you are over the anxious and the non-functioning fear point. And then you can let go and you can really reframe what you're afraid of. Turn it around. Either minimize it and bring another image up that you feel comfortable with so that you create an image that pulls you forward or pulls you away from this fearful situation. But first thing is calm down.
That's such a lovely tip. And I wish somebody had given me that tip when I used to have fear of public speaking and also speaking my truth. Like I was as bad as crying before. If I ever had to speak up, I would cry. And if I was and cry and my whole body would shiver and shake and crazy. And I didn't know why my body reacted that way, but I think this breathing technique would have helped me with that for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
thank you for
I
that.
thought I would have a stroke. I couldn't see anyone in the room anymore. That's how absolutely upset I was about public speaking. Yes. I wish I had known that one then too. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Katerina, how about your thoughts about what are the fears that hold people back from speaking their truth to others? And could you please share a tip with the audience of how to overcome the fears?
Well, I just want to say the other ladies here are very inspiring, and you've given me some tips too. What I would like to say is just have your quiet moment. Just grab a cup of tea, grab a little drink, whatever. Go and sit in the sun, go sit somewhere quiet and just take your journal and just start writing how you feel. Doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to, doesn't even have to be grammatically correct. Breathe, yes, do the breathing, do a little bit of tapping, you know, tap your body. So I am able and capable and all this type of stuff. If you have to do public speaking, put your hand under the table and just do a little tap to keep you focused. There's always going to be some level of fear. All right. It's always going to be there because that's the world we live in. So what I would like to give to you today is just take a big breath and know that you are capable of saying whatever you wish to say. Learn your process, learn what works for you. Do self-educate. Sit quietly every day. Sit in your own energy. How does it feel? What does it make me do? Allow the energy to move through the body and through the throat. If you want to say something, you know, maybe it might be a little squeak at first, or, you know, it might be a couple of words, because there's always going to be fear around. On the other side of the coin too, if you're feeling nervous, that's a good thing, right? Because, you know, when you feel a little nervous, you know, you're gonna say something really good. You're going to do something really well, because it's your body having that anticipation. Oh, great, you know, okay, I'm a little nervous, but we're going to do it. You know, like, allow your body to be authentic about how it's feeling, right? We're talking about being authentic and speaking authentic. Give your body the chance to be authentic. So use the little bit of fear that you do have to go, okay, I can do this now, and just take a breath and just let the energy through the body and just say, great, you know, this is who I am. I love me. How about you sit with me and learn more about me before you make your judgments, you know, things like that. A little tip. What do I promote, and I let my clients, I give my clients, I say, sit with yourself 10 minutes every day. And if any thoughts come through, just ignore it. Just sit with yourself. Learn to love your own energy. Imagine that there's that you're holding yourself, and just allow your body to take your breath and, you know, like, give yourself that relief of knowing that no matter where you are at that given moment, that is how life should be at that moment. Give yourself the courage to have that quiet moment and learn all about yourself from the inside out, not outside in.
Thank you.
Because we all want to be authentic, right?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. Speaking our truth is so important. It can change lives. I was 13 when my dad died, and in India, widows have to wear white for the rest of their life. And that wasn't acceptable to me, that my mother, who was 37 at that time, should wear white for the rest of her life. So the first 1 year mourning period, that's fine. That was acceptable to me. But the day the 1 year mark happened, finished, I was 13. I was fighting with my grandmother and my father's two sisters, fighting with them, speaking my truth, all nervous, shaking, crying, and I'm crying, and because of my nervous system, I'm crying and shaking, but actually I'm doing the most courageous thing ever. And I fought for my mom's right, and they had to give in to this 13-year-old and break the chains of the tradition of wearing white for the rest of their life. So what I was saying is that speaking our truth does matter, and we need to not hold it back, and it could help your own life or somebody else's life. So please, everyone, do speak up when you need to, and it's very important. So Lyndal, last but not least, and you already touched upon, you mentioned some fears of judgment, abandonment, rejection. So I'm sure there are many more fears. And so what are the fears that hold people back from speaking their truths to others? And could you please share a tip with the audience of how to overcome the fears?
Yeah, and everyone had some amazing tips there that we can all learn from. I think when you start to know yourself, when you love yourself, the fear seems to change into a place of knowing. You become a different type of empowerment. So I suppose my tips would be more around, how do we get to that knowing? How do we get to that empowerment? How do we get to know what our own truth is? And I have 3 tips that would be important for us to think about. And the first one is just to be really conscious of everything that you say and everything that you're thinking, because we sometimes just go on the patterning of saying things out loud and not being conscious of what we're saying. So when you start to get into that behavior of listening to what you're saying, listening to what your mindset is saying, even if it doesn't resonate with you, just be conscious of that and question yourself first about, is this right for me? Is this a belief that I want to keep? Or is this something I want to change moving forward? The second thing would be to really get an understanding of what resonates with you. And everyone can do this, whether you feel it in your heart, your solar plexus, whatever it is. Everyone knows when something doesn't feel right. They get a funny feeling in their stomach or somewhere in their body, and they know that that doesn't resonate. So get to a place where you know what resonates for you, where you feel good about the energy around the people that you interact with, you know, the environment that you're in. What is your truth, right? What resonates for you? When you know that, it's very easy to discern whether you're in the right situation or the wrong situation as well, and to start going back to those questioning of, is this my truth? And the third thing would just be simply to, when someone says something to you that doesn't resonate with you, instead of reacting, just take a minute, think about where you're feeling with that. And it's okay to go back to them and go, that's not my truth. I appreciate who you are for what you're saying, for what you believe in, but that's not my truth. And we're okay to stand in our power like that and to say, you know, I love you, but what works for you doesn't work for me.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, and so for being so open and generous with your tips. And I loved having all of you here. And I think Sophia is going to join us to talk about or wrap up for us.
Thank you, Reshma, and everyone else. That was wonderful. That was absolutely amazing. I've been sitting here in the background, putting everyone's links in. So for everyone who is watching, do click on the links below. Check out all the amazing offers that these wonderful women have, because they've just given up an hour of their time to share their passion on, you know, on speaking our truth. And I love the tips. I really, really do. I love the tapping and the breathing and just going out and doing stuff. And, you know, if I can just say, sometimes we forget, especially with public speaking, right? Especially with public speaking, we forget that everyone starts the same. You know, the best public speaker now in today's world at one stage started off very, very nervous. So we've all been there. We all know what it's like. So Great. I love it. Before we finish up, I'd love to just go around quickly and give everyone an opportunity just to share if you have anything that you'd like to share, anything that you're giving away, or tell us a little bit about your business. I have put all your links in the comments, but I'd love to offer that. And what about you, Linda? Tell us, do you have any programs that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I actually have a workshop or a webinar coming up next week, which
Yes.
is called Overcoming Overwhelm. So
Yes.
but that's on my website, lindabins.com, if anyone wants to know about that. But, you know, I love talking to people and finding out what's going on for them. And, you know, usually I find that what people think is the problem is never the problem. So I love to offer people just a free chat just to talk about what's going on for you and see if we can get to the root of what's really going on and what you can do about it. So again, there's a link on my website for that if anyone would like to book a time to chat with me. Love to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really, really appreciated. Thank you. And what about you, Marina? What do you want to share anything and tell us a little bit about your book?
Oh,
Or
yes.
if you've got anything else that you'd like to share.
But I do have my new book. I mean, new. It's almost a year old. Your GPS to Happiness. But I have since then have started to go into hypnotherapy, and now I am doing hypnobirthing, which is absolutely fascinating. It helps women to relax and be natural giving birth without fear. Oh, we talk about fear, without panic, without anxiety, and allow their body to go with their body. And so I'm excited about doing that. And I do other hypnotherapy and NLP techniques in my coaching. I, of course, also offer a free consult. And that's on my website. Thank you. I'm happy being here. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you so much. And Katerina, what about your beautiful self? What would you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, like I do coaching and mentoring, and I also have healing. I've got the crystal light bed healing as well. If you I hold space for you so you can go deep within your team. So if you'd like to do that and have a deeper relationship in that way, you can visit me on my website. Everything's on there, so just reach out. I'm available for you to have a little chat with me. And always remember, you know, be your true self no matter what. Thank you for having me.
And thank you. Thank you very much. And for everyone who is watching, like I said, do reach out to Katerina, click on the link and schedule a time. Even if it's just for a conversation, she is beautiful. And if I can just say to Katerina, every 2 weeks comes into our Sacred Community Facebook group and does a free live light language energy update. The links are below in the comments for more information on that. So definitely do check out that. And Lyndal, what about your wonderful self? Do you have anything that you would like to share? And also tell us a little bit about your tribe.
Yes. So I suppose first off, if anyone wants to work with me or connect with me, they can reach me on my website, which is steppingintome.com.au. I do coaching. I have my book and courses there. I also have a workshop coming up on the 2nd of August, which is about rebuilding trust in your relationship. So it's a bit of an interactive thing. If you're interested in that, the details will be on the website. And my tribe is called Your Inner Oracle because I believe that we ultimately are the truth. All the answers are within us, and we just have to know how to access them and to get that information out. So yeah, if you are part of Sacred You, please come along and join the tribe. And we have some really good discussions about some very interesting topics.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And again, I do recommend Your Inner Oracle. Lots of great conversations. And of course, Lyndal does pull some oracle cards, which are great too. Reshma, our wonderful facilitator, would you like to share anything that you're offering and tell us about your tribe as well?
Yeah, sure. I host the tribe Flourish with Freedom and Sacred You community, and that happens every Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And I basically help women to live a freedom lifestyle, to be open, to change to new ways of thinking, new perspective, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to speak their truths and live the life they deserve and desire on their terms, not worrying about what people have to say and about what culture and society has to say, so that they can live a life of peace, joy, happiness, and also with courage and confidence, and also have more faith, trust, and belief in themselves so they can achieve all this beautiful stuff that they want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I have certainly seen Reshma flourish so much since you've started hosting your tribe. Reshma, you are a walking example of flourishing with freedom. So thank you. And thank you for facilitating today's panel discussion. It has been an honor. For everyone out there who is watching, do come and join us. We've got lots more coming up. I'm not going to tell you what's coming up yet. Maybe I will. Yes, I will very quickly. Barriers to Meaningful Conversations is coming up soon. There you go. Speaking your truth to yourself and others. And now with Barriers to Meaningful Conversations. These two go really well together. That is coming up in just 3 days' time. Wonderful. Love it. And do click on the links below for more information on all these wonderful speakers. And thank you. Thank you for joining us.